Hi, so here I am today in Techstars Berlin with the managing director of Techstars Berlin, Jag Singh, who I've known for about 10 years, give or take.
Far too long.
Far too long.
Too long. Hey
So,
there.
Jag, great to be here. Thanks for hosting me and
Of
letting
course,
me meet some of your startups.
Thanks for coming by, man. It's so good to see you.
It's so exciting talking to bright, ambitious, can-do people like we met this morning.
This is what happens when you spend time outside of Westminster.
Well, this is a good point. Good point, well made. Tell me first of all, what is Techstars?
So we're a investment organization. We invest in early stage startups like Uber, Twilio, SendGrid, ClassPass. Some of these you might have heard of. And we give them a little bit of cash, but we give them a ton of mentoring and advice. It's an organization built by founders who have gone on to be very successful, and we surround new founders or founders of early stage startups with the best possible advice and support that they can have, the infrastructure they can have to really accelerate their companies and grow as fast as they can.
And tell me about Techstars Berlin. So you've been here for 2 years?
I've been here for a couple of years now, yeah.
And how long has Techstars been in Berlin?
So we started, I think we opened our office in 2015.
Yeah.
And we started by partnering with some organizations like Metro, it's a big wholesaler here in Germany, and also SAP. And so we set up a couple of funds and we kind of tested the waters and started investing in early stage companies that also helped or that also fit the mold or that could also do business with the likes of SAP and large corporates like Metro. And then a couple of years ago, we decided we wanted to focus on our own brand and also companies that weren't necessarily just capable of working with Metro and SAP. And so we've got a program here set up for investing in 10 early stage companies. We give them, like I said, we give them a little bit of cash, a lot of coaching, a lot of advice, and then we help them fundraise after that from private investors.
Why Berlin? Berlin is part of Germany, obviously it's the capital, and Germany is sometimes seen as a pretty staid and sort of conservative business environment.
Yeah.
Startup center in the middle of Berlin, in
Yeah.
the middle of Germany. Why is that?
Well, there's actually a ton of innovation happening here in Berlin, and the cool thing about Berlin is that it's not necessarily representative of Germany. I would actually challenge the assertion that Germany's not a great place to do business. I mean, it's still a massive stalking economy, right? Like within the EU, it's got incredible amounts of influence, even outside. Germany's one of the best places to do business if you're a large company. But it does translate to the smaller startups because Berlin holds that special place. One, like I said, it's not representative of all of Germany. It's actually one of the most globalized, cosmopolitan cities around. And I think the best way to look at Berlin is Berlin's been shaped by a ton of history. And from the late 90s, when Berlin became the center for political activity in the country, there wasn't a lot of industry here, and so politics became the kind of the biggest industry. But what Berlin has always been is a utopia for the misfits, the people who were always not necessarily in the mainstream in other parts of Europe, and so they've flocked to Berlin since the early 90s. And so since the late 90s, we've had the capitalists, the socialists, the anarchists, all competing with each other. And out of all this creative destruction, we've had some amazing companies come out. We've had the likes of Zalando, we've had the likes of Get Your Guide, N26. There's more unicorns within a square block of our office here than most other European cities.
It's really exciting. I did some work for some big corporates, including SAP and Robotron and and Siemens in what was then the new Eastern Germany or the former Eastern Germany.
Yeah.
And there is that kind of exciting can-do attitude, which maybe isn't everywhere, but it is definitely here. You can feel it on the streets.
Yeah.
I've worked a little bit overseas in Silicon Valley and the UK and in Germany with businesses. You've done much more than I have. What's the difference between the startup environment in the UK and the US and mainstream Europe in Germany?
So the way I like to think about it is if you're an early stage founder and if you need to secure a deal, if you're in the US, you just pick up the phone, and if you can get through to the C-suite at any large Fortune 500 company, they'll answer the phone, and they'll answer the phone with an attitude of, all right, cool, let's do this deal, right? Like from the minute they pick up the phone, it's a cool. Like, I know you're selling me, but let's figure out how we can make this work. Let's do a deal. And in the UK, you might get that C-level execs phone number. You call a FTSE 100 company, and you might call. You might be able to get through, but they'll let the phone ring. They don't really want to answer the phone. And in Germany, well, that phone number is not published for data privacy reasons. That doesn't mean business doesn't happen. It's just you've got to adapt to a different way of doing business. In the US, cold calling works because you can literally call any random person and try and sell them, and they'll probably say, okay, cool, let's try it out. In the UK, cold calling works to a certain extent, but you have to have warm introductions. And in Germany, you have to have hot introductions. You have to have, trust. It's an economy based on trust and credibility, and so you've got to figure out how to navigate that path if you're trying to do business with a large corporation.
And that's part of what you offer in your package.
Well,
those connections and that sort of reputation.
The connections, but it's also just the awareness that that's how you have to do business. Yeah. Again, I'm a new immigrant to Germany, but many of our mentors, some of them have been here for, some of them are actually Berliners, but many of them have been here for 15, 20 years. So they've navigated those paths before. And so if you're a founder of an early stage company, and if you haven't perhaps had the experience that of building a company before, the feedback that you get from mentors, the advice that you get from mentors is invaluable because you've just figured out how to build a shortcut to grow your business. You wouldn't be able, you may be able to get there on your own in the end, but it might take you 18 months.
And of course, the caveat about that is that when you're cold calling in the States or in the UK, or when you're networking here, is that you have something that's of value.
Exactly. And we like to think that we're pretty good at vetting companies. We see, I saw over 1,000 applications last year. I met with over 1,000 companies last year, and we kind of whittled them down to 10 that we take into the accelerator program every year.
This is a sort of fishing competition, hoping that you'll give me some secret tips, but the question that so many people ask is, what do angel investors look for in a startup? What is your criteria for a startup?
I think for me, it's all about the ability to have set out a plan. And I mean this not in terms of a business plan, but a plan for what you're going to need to tackle, what kind of assumptions you're going to be validating over the course of a few months. So the way I like to think about it is, if I'm a seed stage investor, I'm going to evaluate you based on your ability to have validated all the assumptions that you set out to kind of validate at the pre-seed stage. And so you go to the pre-seed investor, so someone before me, or in some cases I've been a pre-seed investor too, and you say, right, I have this assumption that I can get X number of people who look like this, businesses that have this profile, to pay for this product, and that this product will work. And so, cool, I'm like, great, I'll give you a little bit of cash, why don't you go test all those assumptions out? And then 6 months later you come back and go, hey, all those assumptions I had, well, I've got a few more, but I've cracked 99% of them. And I need more cash to attack these other assumptions. And so if you think about it as a stage process, you go from pre-seed to seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, D onwards. The pre-seed, seed, the idea phase, the kind of early execution phase, is all about just clearing out all those assumptions you have about the world. And so if you have industry experience, if you have knowledge and domain expertise in this industry, well, you're probably going to be a better bet. And so I'd rather give someone who's got founder market fit a little bit of money at the early stage, because they're probably going to know the challenges ahead, and then I judge them solely on the basis of their ability to validate assumptions. And at some point you get to the biggest assumption will be, well, okay, great, we've now proven this with 100,000 people. If you're a B2C company, we've proven this with 100,000 people. Can we take this to 10 million people? And what are the steps needed? What are the assumptions you have to tackle those? And at that point I go, cool, you're probably ready for your Series A round now. Let's go talk to some big boys. Let's talk to some big investors who will ask me and say, okay, well, how do they do with their journey so far?
Now, we had some fun this morning working with some of your CEOs.
That's
and
right.
I think there was 10 there this morning, but you get 1,000 applications a year? So 1,000 down to 10. What do you look for in a pitch deck? What do you look for in a? How do those 1,000? How did those 10 stand out in their pitch deck? Did they send you an email that was good? What shone? Or was it a pitch deck they sent you? How do you impress Jag Singh?
Well, we start with the premise that it's all about communicating your idea clearly and communicating what you've done and what you set out to accomplish, your assumptions that you're validating. In many cases, founders are horrible or crap at communicating that or expressing that in person. And that's where the pitch deck comes in. Like the pitch deck is it's basically an excuse for not being able to communicate what you do clearly, and so you have to rely on a pitch deck, and that means I have to look through 12 pages. I have a very simple criteria, and every investor is different, so this is specific to me. I look for jargon-free language in a pitch deck or even a pitch. I look for evidence that you know the industry and you know the kind of pitfalls. And I may not know that industry, but I will know a lot of people in the industry. So I rely a lot on a network of friends, colleagues, other investors in the industry to sort of help me fact check and kind of sandbox some of these things, some of these industries. At which point, if I feel that you are credible, that you have the ability to almost predict the next set of challenges, then I'm very likely to sort of say, let's have a chat, and I'd love to dig in more into the unit economics or how you think the unit economics will work. Many of the companies that we invest in, that I've invested in, are so early that they're looking for money to build a product, and I always kind of challenge them back to say, well, you should be able to sell without building a product. So why don't you go sell, and I'll help you kind of narrow down who your customers are and what they're buying and what you're selling and why they're buying. And let's go pre-sell a little bit and test the waters, and let's de-risk it. So a founder that can prove to me that they're able to de-risk the situation at every juncture of their journey, that's kind of founder I want to back.
I think it's Guy Kawasaki who talks about the 10-slide pitch deck.
Yeah.
Do you buy into the less is more?
I definitely do. I come from it's also, I guess, reflective of my communication style. I'm much more of a tabloid person than a broadsheet person. I like short, punchy headlines compared to long academic essays. I guess I'm a millennial.
And I'm a boomer, right? As you pointed out this morning.
I never said so.
You did this morning.
Okay, boomer.
Final question. How early should a startup look for investment or for advice? Or is that two questions?
I think that's two questions, but there's that old adage, right? You ask for advice, you get money. Ask for money, you probably get nothing. So my suggestion to all early stage founders is go talk to an investor, but don't talk to them about like raising money. Ask them about the other companies that they've seen. Come to them with specific questions, and they'll want to help you out because that's what we're in the business of.
And then just to round up, when's your next establishment? When's your next grade? When's your next intake?
Well, so unfortunately, we can only do this once a year. We invest in 10 companies once a year through our accelerator program. And so the next one is in 2021.
And so when should people start applying for
applications that? Open, I think, mid-July or August. If you just go to techstars.berlin, so https techstars.berlin, there's a ton of information there about what to expect, how to go about the application process, and even to actually just leave your email address so that we notify you.
And do you have any special industries that you've got as favorites or as special babies?
I probably stay away from hardware startups just because of the challenges of raising money as a hardware company, and also it's reflective of the general investment climate for hardware startups. In Europe, it's a little bit tricky. There aren't a lot of investors who like investing in hardware. It requires a different set of skills and expertise. But generally, I don't have any challenges in investing in specific industries.
And I guess you don't. This is not a Germany only.
Absolutely
setup.
Not.
You'll
No.
welcome applications from anywhere in the world.
Of course. I mean, in our program the year before, like the program last year, we didn't have a single German startup. We actually had startups from Australia, Israel, the UK, Netherlands, Romania. Even this year, I think only 5 of the startups are from Berlin. Most of them are from abroad. We've actually got a startup from LA that's moved out here for the program.
Must be because of the weather.
Sure.
Well, that's all from myself and Jag Singh from Techstars, Berlin. Thanks very much, Jag.
Thank you.
Back to work.
Back to work.